Between Percy Jackson, Cedar Point, and the Odyssey, sirens are just everywhere. Be careful. Hi guys, I'm Kate. I study classical mythology, classical archaeology, classical reception, and Percy Jackson. I'm here today to give you my official book to TV show review of episode 5 of season 2 of the Percy Jackson TV show on Disney+. So I'm gonna split this episode into 3 parts. Polyphemus' Island, Circe's Island, and I guess the Sirens' Island. Starting with Polyphemus' Island, I just want to say that the first thing I noticed when Clarice showed up onto the island was that with the information which was just stated by Circe, it made no sense, right? Because Circe had just stated earlier in the episode that you have to pass by the Sirens' Island in order to get to anywhere else in the Sea of Monsters, like Polyphemus' Island, right? Which I thought was kind of weird. Like, sure, it's often in your way, but it being like a place that you have to pass seemed like a weird choice, especially because then we end up with Clarice having landed immediately on Polyphemus' Island and not having had any run-in with the sirens. Now, I think that this was done on purpose because, of course, as we'll get into, Circe ends up showing that she's been a bit of a liar to try to keep people on her island. So it would make sense that she's also lied about this part of the Sea of Monsters experience. You don't have to go right next to the sirens, but because so many people had to go through Charybdis and Scylla, they'll assume they did, and so they'll believe Circe because she's so kind and she's trying to help them. I just want to bring that up, but we're going to continue on Polyphemus' Island, not on Circe's Island for the moment, but that was something that I noticed immediately that was a connection between the two subplots. I guess the two plots. And so I wanted to make sure that we got that out of the way first. Okay. Yes, and I know the majority of the episode is focused on Percy and Annabeth with Circe's Island, but I want to do the Clarice bit first because it is important and also it's not the main focus, so I want to get it out of the way. I first wanted to bring up how strong and, like, ready to go Clarice is at the beginning of this episode. She gets captured by a Cyclops for dinner, and she immediately gets out of the net on her own and is immediately creating the wooden stick to pierce the eye of Polyphemus, like Odysseus does in the book. I feel the book as in Homer, the Odyssey, not Percy Jackson. And I feel like that was a cute little mythological hint. It's also interesting that Polyphemus leaves that out in the open, right? Like, it's probably not the same stick. It's been quite a bit of time since the Odyssey. But it's like he's left that there to give them the idea that they could stop him, but he's smarter than that. And that's another thing I wanted to say. The biggest thing I took away from the entire Grover-Clarice subplot of this episode was Polyphemus is so smart. And that is obviously so different from the books, and I feel like there were a few reasons that they did this. One of course, they seem to want to surprise the audience, the book fans. They want us to be surprised by things and not just to know exactly what is going to happen. And we all assumed that Polyphemus was stupid because he's stupid in the Odyssey, he's stupid in the Sea of Monsters book, so of course he's stupid. But, like, he's already fallen for this once. And we saw at the beginning of the first episode, or at the end of the first episode, I guess. I don't remember exactly when it happened with the sea monster collecting Grover and bringing Grover to the island. But we see that he has a full-blown, like, organizational system to be able to capture satyrs, right? It's not just the fleece like it is in the book, but he has a sea monster ready to capture stragglers. He has all of these things set up so that he can kill as many satyrs as possible. So, of course, he's learned over time how to deal with demigods and satyrs, and that means that he never fell for anything. Which, honestly, helps with one of the things I was a little annoyed about. In the book, there is the whole Penelope subplot where Grover has to sew and then unsew the wedding veil, similar to Penelope in the Odyssey. And I always really liked that connection, so I was kind of bummed it wasn't here. That we do see a little bit of sewing happening for Grover when he is in the cave at the beginning of this episode. But it's not the same, like, you sew it all day and then all night you take it apart thing that they do in the book. And as a mythology nerd, I was sad that we were missing that part. But it makes sense now because that subplot was in order to trick the Cyclops. And the Cyclops has never been tricked, so he's not pushing Grover to get married to him by a certain date. He's waiting. He's waiting for the demigods to show up. He wants them to come. He's not planning on killing Grover until they come. So he has no reason to be pushing for this wedding to happen soon. He is just waiting like a predator for his prey. And that is fantastic. So I'm not mad about it. Also, one of the things I like about it is Rick has a problem with making a large amount of his monsters that are like the taller monsters, like Cyclopses, giants, things like that, dumb. It's just regular. And this season is already showing that that's not true. Like, Tyson is not the smartest person ever, but he's smart. He knows how to get himself out of situations. He knows how to build things. He has emotional maturity. He's able to understand how people see him and want to change that. Like, he's not stupid. And I don't think that Tyson from the books was ever truly dumb, but he's always portrayed in that way, right? Or I think what Rick Riordan was trying to do was show that Tyson has some type of learning disability. And there's nothing wrong with a learning disability, but I don't think that Rick Riordan always balanced that portrayal well. And sometimes instead of just like a nuanced portrayal of someone with a learning disability, it could come off as just, oh, he's stupid. Even though he's not stupid in the books either. And so I appreciate that with the adaptions, Rick is doing a better job of towing that line. Like, Tyson does seem like he might have some learning disability, possibly. But he's also very smart. And we're able to see where he struggles and where he succeeds. And Polyphemus is able to play into the stereotype of the dumb Cyclops and use that to his advantage. But he's not stupid. And so I just want to say that the entire Polyphemus subplot in this episode, with how he's able to trick Clarice into giving him information that he's going to use on Percy and Annabeth. I just want to say that that plot was really well done, and I really enjoyed it. But there are things of this episode I didn't enjoy. So we're going to move on to the main part of the episode with Percy and Annabeth. I want to say straight up that while this is not my favorite book of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, these two chapters are my favorite chapters of the book by far, and that is causing me to be a bit more picky about what changes they make, right? I think that if you are watching this and you're not like a aggressive fan of these two chapters, or you didn't read the book, or basically anything except being absolutely obsessed with these two chapters, then everything that happens in this episode is fantastic. But here's the problem, is these are the two chapters that I've been waiting for them to adapt. I've been so excited. And for the most part, I can let them off easy. There is one scene that is missing that I am almost right about. Like, I've been bringing it up since we watched the episode, that I cannot stand that they skipped a specific scene. But let's start with Cece's Island Resort. I want to say that at first I was highly questioning the choices that they were making in their adaptation of Cece's Island. One major thing that was worrying me was how incredibly different it was from the book, right? Cece here does not hate men. She does not immediately turn Percy into a Cyclops, right? Like, this is a much shorter scene in the books. They show up, she moves Annabeth away from Percy, turns him into a guinea pig, Annabeth figures it out, saves them all, they get onto the pirates, like Queen Anne's Revenge, right? Nice, quick, short, but very memorable, right, with the guinea pig. And I know because they're making it into a full episode, they're going to want to expand on that. And I would be fine with them expanding on it if they didn't take out my favorite scene of the book. We'll get to it. But for the most part, as we went on in Cece's Resort, I decided that I did like what they did. One, I appreciate that we did not turn Cersei into another wronged woman / usually witch, who just hates all men and never changes. And that's just her, that is who she is, right? She just hates all men, and that is basically, her hatred of all men is the summation of her character, right? This was one of the first times in the books that this happens, but with book 3 having a similar scenario with the Huntresses, and then we have the Amazonians later, and we have Medea. It just becomes a pattern, right? There are so many female villains where their plot is just men are awful. And look, they're not fully wrong. Like, you know, there are reasons that these stories were like this way often in the mythology, but there have been a lot more complex portrayals of Cersei since this book was published. I haven't read Cersei by Madeline Miller yet, but I do own it. I will get to it soon. And I know that that is a more complex adaptation of Cersei, and I've read the Odyssey enough times that I know that Cersei doesn't hate men. She just understands that for the most part, men are awful. And so it's more complex, I'd say. And I'm not saying all men are awful. I'm just saying that Cersei thinks that a lot of men are pigs, and so she turns them into pigs, but she does not think that all men are automatically terrible. But she, in the Odyssey, she doesn't want these men to be controlling her. Like, they live in a society where men always take control of women and their lives. And so she stops that immediately, right? By making the decision to turn men immediately into pigs, right? She doesn't give them a chance. And that's not, like, the best thing you can do, right? But, like, once Odysseus stops her, she gets over it, and she hangs out with all of Odysseus's men for a year before they leave. And then they come back, and she takes them for, like, a whole nother day before they go again. Like, it's not cut and dry. And so I appreciate that this was a more complex portrayal of Cersei. I also like that they focused the conversation around Cersei specifically on fatal flaws. So we were able to expand that idea in the books and really make sure that the audience understood what a fatal flaw meant. And I really liked how that conversation really pushed both Annabeth and Percy. It pushes Percy first because he didn't know his fatal flaw, and his fatal flaw is honestly just the best fatal flaw, right? Like, he cares about people that are close to him so much that he'll do anything for them. And that's just so amazing, and you see that at the end of this episode. Why his fatal flaw, while it can be a problem if he lets that part of himself control him so too much, right? At the same time, it just means that, like, he will do anything for the ones that are close to him. He will go to the underworld for his mother. He will go to the Sea of Monsters for Grover. He will do whatever he can to find Tyson back if he finds a way to do that. And it tears him up when he can't. And so I was really happy that we were able to use this episode to highlight this part of Percy's character. Also, the fact that he is fully willing to stop his quest if he's the thing that'll hurt Annabeth, because he cares more about Annabeth living and succeeding than he cares about himself. And that's just amazing. Like, honestly, it's so sweet. I don't know what to say about it other than that. And I think it's funny that Annabeth already knew that pride or hubris were her fatal flaw. And she's like, and I'm proud of that. So that was funny. That was amazing. And I like that we turn that on its head by the time we get to the sirens. And just real quick on our moving from one place to the other, I do appreciate how complex Cersei becomes in this scene. She doesn't automatically, turn men into guinea pigs or anything like that, but she does have limits, right? And she does have her own, plans, her own things she wants to gain, and I like the idea of loneliness being the thing that's driving her here. Because in the books, she didn't want anyone but women on her island, and all the women just wanted to stay. And here, it's more realistic that everyone wants to go on their quest, but she's manipulated them into believing that they can't. And so she's set up this environment that is very good for her. And so, of course, if someone comes and tries to, change the environment, she's going to attack, right? Even though Percy really only wants to help Annabeth and he's not doing this for himself, she can't take that chance. She can't. And so I think this episode has what I would have wanted from the Medusa episode last season, where I felt like the episode does a much better job at balancing. She's not a terrible person, but she will do terrible things if she has to. I felt like the Medusa episode last season, while definitely better the second watch through, did have the problem where Medusa's like, I'm not a monster, I'm a victim. And I was there for that, right? I understand what Medusa can represent for people, especially abuse survivors. And so I was excited to see this more nuanced portrayal of Medusa. But then she turns too quickly, right? She's not just turning people into stone if they are, like, attacking her. She had a mailman down there, right? I mean, I know the mailman was Rick Riordan in costume, but, like, she was turning anyone to stone. And so it made her feel like it was all just a lie and she wasn't a victim and she was a monster. And I feel like that's the wrong way to go with Medusa. And here, I felt like it was much more nuanced, right? Like, she is kind of a terrible person, but it's just that she's lonely and she's manipulating others for that reason. She knows what her fatal flaw is, right? And she is manipulating others so that she doesn't have to deal with her own fatal flaw. She can just trick other people into thinking that their fatal flaw is such a big deal that they can't leave. But of course, Percy and Annabeth leave anyway. Annabeth turns Percy and a bunch of pirates from Blackbeard's ship back into humans, and they get on their boats and start sailing away. Here's where the episode gets a little weird for me. Because I like most of it, despite how different it is from the book. But I have one major problem, right? So I kind of like that we do another turnaround where everything is the opposite in the TV show from where everything is opposite in the TV show from what it was in the book. I like how Percy is the one that's tied up and Annabeth has to deal with the earwax. And then the earwax disappears and all of a sudden they don't know what to do because they don't have time to solve this problem. I really appreciate this for one main reason, and it's that Percy and Annabeth have to see the sirens and deal with their fatal flaws instead of just Annabeth. Like, I've always loved this scene in the book, but I do like how we get to deal with both characters. I also really like how they used the siren scene to trick Annabeth when she thought that she was tricking them. She thought that she could just stab the sirens and then her mom would be so proud, and they used that on her into manipulating her. And she was so close to dying. It was such a good scene, especially because for a second I was incredibly weirded out because when Athena comes down and kills the last one, I was like, Athena, that's illegal. You can't just, like, get in the way of your daughter's quest. Like, you're not allowed to do that. So then finding out that that wasn't real and it was the sirens manipulating Annabeth, oh, that was amazing. Real quick, before I get into the thing that really annoyed me, I want to say that I was slightly confused by the sirens' design. I mean, I'm a classicist, so I was hoping for, like, the bird people that are, like, kind of look like vultures. I was really excited for that, honestly. I understand that there's a lot of female bird people in mythology, and there's already the harpies and the furies, so having another group of bird people would be a bit weird. I also understand that they can fly, so you'd think that they would just go and grab the people off their ships, and so I can see why that would be a problem. Also, I can see why the normal mermaid route wouldn't make sense here, because they'd be in the water, and then, or they could be in the water, so then Percy would have to deal with them, and that would be a whole different scene. It'd probably be an action scene where Percy's, like, having to stab them and stuff, and that is just not what we wanted here, right? So I can see why they decided to have them be like these volcanic monsters that are growing out of the island and they can't move. So they have to lure their food towards them. I thought that was really cool, honestly. I was just, I guess, a little disappointed because I am a huge Greek mythology nerd, and in the books, Rick describes them correctly as like these vulture bird people, and I'm constantly hoping that they're gonna do something accurately. I mean, I wanted the stupid pine tree in Charybdis. Like, this is just who I am, okay? But the last thing I want to bring up in the siren parts of the episode is the lack of the bubble scene. I was waiting for it. It was the only thing I truly wanted, okay? I just wanted the bubble scene. Like, anyone who's read the book here knows what I'm talking about. It is the most iconic scene in this book, and one of the most iconic scenes in all of Percy Jackson. Annabeth is struggling in Percy's arms to try to get towards the siren. Percy pulls her underwater and realizes that she can't hear the music underwater. So he pulls her farther down, but she can't breathe. So he makes all the bubbles come together into one massive bubble, and they just float underwater until they're safe. Just like, my heart. My heart. It's just the most beautiful scene. And I have been waiting and waiting and waiting for this scene for years. Like, over a decade. Way more than that, honestly. Like, 15 years or so? 16, 17? I don't know. It's been a while since I read this book for the first time in 5th grade. And I've always wanted to see that scene adapted, and no one has done it. Not the movie, not the TV show, and they had the opportunity. They pulled Annabeth and Percy underwater. They could have decided that it was the safest option to just keep them underwater, and then, like, they could have held each other in the bubble. It would have been beautiful. They could have cut something out if they needed to make it work. I needed it, okay? And I'm going to be forever annoyed that they just didn't do that scene. Because I understand that they want to surprise us fans by changing things up. And so far this season, the changes have been quite enjoyable. But there are just certain things that I want to see. And I want them to put in the effort to have these scenes in there. And this is basically the only one for this book that I was... Well, and besides the guinea pig, this was the only scene that I desperately needed in this episode. And I'm just disappointed. The rest of the episode's good, but I'm gonna be sad about this. Now, is this, like, ruining the episode or the season for me? No. This is selfish, I guess, but I wanted it so badly, and I'm going to tell you that. But just one more thing I want to talk about, connected to the whole siren thing. The conversation at the end on the boat. It was just so good. I don't even know what to say about these Percy Annabeth scenes. I feel like if I watched them more closely and did some analysis on them, I'd have a lot to say. But this is just a quick, just watch the episode review. So all I can really say is, wow, not only do they have good chemistry, but the writing is just so good. How Percy says that the only reason he survived was because he was so busy saving her that he didn't even notice the sirens. And how Annabeth says the only reason she survived was because he was there. And they're like, well, this is one good version of fate, I guess. It was just so sweet. It was so nice to have that scene. And that almost makes up for the lack of the bubble scene, because they still have that moment of, like, closeness and understanding and communication, which teenage boys aren't always good at. So I'm impressed, Percy. You're doing a great job at communication. But yeah, it was a very nice scene, and I think that the strongest part of this season is the relationship between Percy and Annabeth. And I am so happy that they have been focusing on it, but they've also been focusing on comedy and humor and like getting the details right. This is a really good season. And don't think that just because I'm upset about my bubble means that it's bad all of a sudden. It's great. I would like a bubble scene. I would, maybe it was a deleted scene and they could put it on YouTube. Like anything, please. What happened in between Percy dragging her into the water and getting her into the boat? Because, like, the boat was still near the sirens, right? Like, come on. Come on, guys. Please. Anyway, that is the end of my book to TV show review of episode 5 of Percy Jackson. Until the next one, I will see you later.